So now we get to talk about Nullifidians. All right. So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. I play a Nullifidian, and I have words to say about Nullifidian. All right. So this is probably gonna be, if Ghoul was a pretty long video when I uploaded it, Nullifidian is probably gonna be just as long. So just fucking strap in, buckle your seats, buddy. I got a lot of shit to talk about when it comes to Nullifidians. Okay. You're a light blue human. That's it. That's makeup. I go into the woods and I paint myself blue, damn it, and I whack nerds with bats, okay? And it is the best time of my life. We Okay. You're light blue. And there's a really good makeup brand called Paradise that I personally use and the other Nullifidians I've met have used. Uh And Nullifidians are the race that care the most about the mist. So if you've seen episode 102 of this video series, we talk a little bit about the mist, and we're probably gonna get into the mist. This is probably gonna have a lot of rabbit holes in this one that I'm gonna go down. Yeah, life on Eldratha can be difficult for a Null. Yep. Okay, so Nullifidians are the mist itself. They are imbued with magic to the point of not being affected by it, as drops of water is not made more wet by the river. Okay, so Nullifidians come from the mist. They come from the mist, and they are warriors. They're warriors that come from the mist, and they're immune to magic. And they also can't cast magic. And you might be like, oh, so they're like a mage slaying race. Yes, yes, they are. There are downsides. There are very big downsides that come with being immune to magic. Okay? The same magic that can easily heal an ally does not work on a null. They have to rely on the crafters. They have to rely on medicine men, alchemists, or brewers, because there's also really fun brews that also heal, which is super cool because you get to roleplay being drunk and you get to gain health at the same time. It's sick. They're very honorful. Honor is paramount to the culture of these nomadic mistborn people. Um, they live in. So I personally haven't had the chance to meet a whole lot of Nullifidians because there's a very good reason to why. I can list you 20 reasons why you should not play a Nullifidian. Okay, I'm gonna be straightforward. Playing Nullifidian, and this is not coming from me. This is what other people have said to me who have previously played Nullifidians, because this was a race that was around when the game started, I believe. And there was a plenty of people who spent time playing a Nullifidian, and they say that playing Nullifidian is playing the LARP, is playing Shiftedlands on hard mode. It is not fun. I am going to tell you that right out of the gate. It is tough to play a Nullifidian, and this is not to puff up my own ego or anything. Because trust me, like, you get smoked when you're a Nullifidian really quickly. Um, this it sucks not being able to be healed by magic. It really does. There's not a whole lot of healing that's being made outside of magic very regularly. So, and the thing is too is that everybody around you is going to be getting healed by magic, and you're going to be seeing how easy it is for other people, and it's going to be very frustrating. If you're a new player, really don't play Nullifidian. We're going to cover it because it's the race I play. Um, but I promise you, do not walk into your first game as an Nullifidian. You're not gonna like it. It's not gonna be nearly. It's going to suck. And I was very lucky. I was very fortunate on my first event that it was specifically a nature versus chaos bad guy thing, in like a forest setting. So that was like the whole plot of the event. And so we had nature elementals that were like, and the thing is that raw nature elementals can give you unnatural magic things that work on Nullifidians to heal them. So in my first game, I got very fortunate, and the whole game we had an ally NPC that had the possibility of healing me when like almost nobody else could. So I was very fortunate on my first game because I died a couple of times on my first game. It sucked. And it's very frustrating for the other people too because they want to do something to help you but they can't. It's really, you're cutting out a big portion of the game, and that's just the healing. We just talked about the healing. There's a lot of other stuff, but we're gonna get into the skills, okay? We're gonna get into the skills. Athletics, 6 athletics. That's pretty good. I think Minotaurs had 6 athletics. Getting lots of body is very important on an Nullifidian. Specifically, with the other races having a lot of body is okay. Having more body as a Nullifidian is expressly very important because you do not get to heal it typically back very easily. So having more health is very important to a Nullifidian. So out of all the races, you're going to want to pick up all 6 of these athletics if you're going to play one. And I'm going to label this specifically out of the way right at the beginning here. Play Nullifidian at your own peril. I'm going to advise you on how best to play Nullifidian here because I've played Nullifidian for a hot minute. So if you're still dead set on Nullifidian for some reason, we're gonna go over what makes Nullifidian work. Okay, so you have a fat detriment that says cannot use magic. Look how big this thing is. You get 10 build for it though, which is sweet. That's the biggest detriment. There's a reason why it gives you 10 build. It's because it's the biggest detriment in the game, and it's the worst detriment to have in the game. Cannot use magic, right? So you don't get to learn. So let's just start it off. You don't get to learn meta magic, with the exception of familiar. So familiar is a meta magic skill that allows you to summon a buddy with you, which is cool. You get to summon a buddy, and like you can summon like a pet wolf or like a pet dwarf, and you have to have somebody play as that thing, and they're technically like a mini character, which is cool. So if you're like a father and a son, and the father's playing the PC, and like maybe the son gets to be like the little monster that runs around behind him, it's cool, it's fun. Familiar. So they don't cut you out of familiar, which it doesn't. In terms of the world, it doesn't make sense that you could get familiar, but they aren't going to cut off familiars to Nullifidian players, which is why this is an exception, because it would suck to just cut off that part of the game, because this skill is going to cut you off from a lot of the game, and they're like, well, maybe we shouldn't cut them out of familiar, right? Though your familiar may never learn Sorcerer Spirit. That's interesting. So you don't get to use magic skills. You can't be a potion crafter. You don't get to learn the scholarly skills like read and write magic, which means that deciphering runes and crap is not possible for you. And you don't get sorcery either. If you, for some reason, there's ways to get detriments that involve doing stupid stuff. So there's a way that you can technically get this by touching like a pool of magic or random. Like there's things that are like, there are events where random chaosy stuff will do random stuff to you, and they might give you this detriment, which would really suck. So incapable of activating magic items. That means if somebody has a really cool magic sword, you don't get to use it, or using their magical properties. So you cannot use the magical properties of ritually enhanced magic items, which is half the late game. Like, what you do when you've learned all of your skills and stuff and you have all this money is you spend this money on really cool items. You don't get to interact with any of those items. Anything with meta magic, any artifacts. There are exceptions to this. Relics, potions, anything with magic, ward keys, mastercrafted jewelry that produces magical effects, which is also cool. Like you get rings of magic and stuff. A lot of the other people will get. One of the most common things that I've seen in terms of magic items is if you're a spellcaster, and you'll get a ring that makes you cast one of these spells better, right? Like a minus. So you know how you get like reduced casting? You can get a reduced casting effect by wearing a ring. Like that's one of the most common magic items I've seen. Anyway, you don't get to use any of those, which doesn't. You're not going to be casting magic anyway, so it doesn't matter. But for somebody who randomly got this detriment, that would suck. You may use its. So if like a dwarf makes an unshatterable weapon, there are magical ways to make a weapon unshatterable. And the item is still unshatterable, so it doesn't really interact with you that much. So a unshatterable weapon doesn't suddenly become shatterable when you're holding it, which is okay. Having unshatterable weapons is pretty nice. And you still get its crafted bonuses. So a dwarf crafter can make a +5 sword, and it's like a really, really sharp sword. So that's not magical at all. That's just really good crafting. So you get to use stuff like that. So like the best sword for a Nullifidian would be like a +5 unshatterable sword, and that's it. Because undisarmable effects, like making a sword undisarmable, is typically a magical thing. So you don't get undisarmable swords. So disarms are really good against you, and disarms are almost laughable against a lot of people because they have undisarmable stuff. So that's why claws are pretty cool. You may use its crafted bonuses, and it remains unshatterable regardless of how it became unshatterable. You may use your own foci, and foci are really cool. Foci are it's a conversation about uppers. But foci, you can make your sword a foci, which makes it like a slightly magical sword, and that allows you to do stuff with it. So there are some kind of ways to get a magical sword as an Nullifidian, but it's really difficult. And you can't use, yeah, and so you can use enhanced items. So when I was talking about like the +5 swords from dwarfs, like you can use those because that's just normal smithing. It's not magical. You may not use items created through artificing rituals. I think there's one artifact, and I couldn't really tell you about it, but there's one artifact I think that I've seen that Nullifidians can use, but it's like super niche, and it would be a gazillion dollars. It'd be expensive as hell. You're not going to see anything that you is in art. You're not going to interact with artifacts. Runes may not be used upon purchasing the skill, and you may not focus upon a master crafted piece of jewelry. I don't know what those are. They're probably in there for a good reason, to stop you from like getting a loophole or some crap. Probably, I would assume. Giving up runes is like okay. The runes. This is what makes things disarmable. Is you get a crafted rune, and that's in the rulebook, I think, so I can talk about that. There are undisarmable runes that people will get on a sword, and then they'll make their sword unshatterable. So they'll have an undisarmable, unshatterable sword, and you don't get to play with that, which means that disarms are really good at you. And almost every major long-term player is going to have that exact sword, and you're not going to have that. So when people hit you with disarms, you're the only one around you that's going to be taking disarms, which is silly. Well, we get 2 strength. Okay, whatever. And so that was the detriment. So the detriment cost 10. The immunity to magic spells cost 10. Okay. So this means all of the magic defenses, like the phase, like the Grant Blink Spirit, the best word you can say in the game is phase as a defense. You don't get access to that. Uh, so you can't have the spells on you. You can't have things like magical healing doesn't work against you. And you also don't get protection against magically enhanced weapons. Like there's not like, oh, I have a magic sword and now because I'm immune to magic, I'm immune to somebody's magic sword. No, that's not how that works. You still get hit by it. So if somebody hits you with like 25 magic, you're not immune to it. You're immune to specifically spells. You're not immune to you're not immune to magic. This doesn't read immunity to magic. It reads immunity to magic spells. So you are not immune to other people doing magical stuff that isn't a magic spell. So 25 magic or 25 like somebody swinging a sword that swings for magic, you're not immune to that. Um you cannot become the target of meta magic effects, which is can be frustrating sometimes. Uh which I a question to be had here is if guarantee resurrection, which is a meta magic, and if you've seen the Kesserin video, they have a racial ability to do that. So the racial ability, I'm pretty sure, would just interact with you fine. So you better hope there's a Kesserin if you're resurrecting. But I don't know if meta magic guarantee resurrection works for you. So, which I'm gonna be honest, I haven't pulled a stone yet. I've been very lucky. I have not pulled a stone yet. Because I've been scared crapless a lot of the time, and that's another reason why you don't want to play Null is because you get afraid to go on and do stuff, and that can be tough, especially when you're at a LARP and you want to say yes, yes, yes to all the adventures and stuff. Uh, the skill grants non-spell elemental attacks, so like magical fire, like if you're fighting an elemental, like a fire elemental, and that elemental is throwing fire at you. You don't. That's not magic. That's not magic. It's elemental. You're still taking it. You're not immune to runes. So you might think that, oh, cannot use magic. I can't use runes. Runes must be magic. Nope. they're not magic in that same way. So you take runes, and runes are really good because you get like 50. Runes are like a really weird niche kind of attacking character that we'll get into when we cover the crafting stuff. But there's very quick, like you can very easily get a 500 damage rune for pretty dirt cheap and on a sword or something, and like do it like a one time, like this sword for once may swing 500 like lava or something silly. So those exist, and you're not immune to them. And this also doesn't prevent rituals. Okay, we'll get into that. It's not a huge downside when you're playing an Nullifidan. Uh, and we'll get into rituals here in a second. Uh, but you're not immune with this specifically. You are not immune to ritual magic. So as a base Nullifidian, you are still affected by rituals, which is neat. There are things you can do with ritual magic that will affect you and help you, so that's cool. If you were playing a base Nullifidian, I'm gonna tell you right now, there is no reason why you should play base Nullifidian and then do something else. Well, actually, I'm dumb. There's a really good reason because Reavers exist. You should be a Reaver if you're not doing an Elder Nullifidian. And Reavers are the two pools that do is Knavery and Weapon Mastery, which, by the way, you get a reduction to both. That's pretty cool. So, because you can't do magic, you get reductions to both of the fighting things. That's pretty good. Only humans get that. So you're like human adjacent here because you don't care about casting spells because you can't. Uh, and that's magic is really good, guys. This is probably sounding ranty and silly, and I'm sure there's only going to be like 10 views on this video. But if you're watching this and you're sticking through, I appreciate it because uh, I appreciate letting out the rage here. Bonus sword. Bonus sword is okay. I have it. Bonus sword is really good. +1 damage to a sword. So your base 2 damage sword becomes 3 damage, and then 4 damage because you have enhanced strength 2. So your base swing is 4 with a sword. And for some, I have no idea, and this has not even been explained to me. We have threshold 4 for some reason. Like for gargoyles, they have like stony skin, and that like makes sense. They're a gargoyle. They have stony skin that's like tough to get past. There's no mention of that. As far as I'm aware, I'm just a blue human. So I have no idea why we have 4 threshold. But I'm not complaining about it. 4 threshold is sick. 4 threshold is sweet, man. Uh like I get to ignore squirrels all day. It's pretty useful. I have all 4 of my threshold because having 4 threshold is pretty cool. And yeah. Again, doesn't help against slay or sever limbs or something. Oh, yeah, that's the thing to talk about. So we've talked about healing and that you have to be healed by alchemy and you can't be healed by magic, okay? So when you get a limb cut off or a limb crushed and you can't use your limb, you also have to go get alchemy or medicine man or some way to put your limb back together. And almost 99.9% of the effects of ways to do that in game, you saw how lizardmen have a racial that lets them do that. The main way that you do that is through magic. So like sever limbs or crush limb effects are really, really scary against a Nullifidian. Like if I hear sever limb, I walk the other direction away, dude. Like I run away like a wuss because I am not going to be potato. Because like if you don't have any of those, and it's not a common thing that people make, right? Like because 90% of people get to just have a spell that grants back their limb, right? So when you are a crafter and you're thinking about what you want to make, like what you want to spend your time building and making with your production, your thought process is like, what is the most efficient thing I could do for money most of the time, right? And that does not include the limb regrowth stuff. So finding alchemists and breweries and things to regrow limbs without magic is difficult to find and it's expensive, relatively speaking. It's not the most expensive stuff, but it's higher up there than the most common alchemies that everybody wants because there's not a whole lot of people making it. So personally, I walk around with like 10 potions. I walk around with like 10 alchemies of restore limb and I do it for a dang good reason. Uh, and on your first game as Nullifidian, you're not gonna have 10 of those walking around with you. In my first game of Nullifidian, I got both my legs chopped off, and it took us like 2 hours. So I had to spend 2 hours of my first game not having legs, which means I don't get to walk around, I don't get to like adventure or whatever. Until thankfully that same NPC nature spirit like had some, I'm pretty sure they don't actually do that, but for lore reasons they were like, yeah, we can regrow your limbs for you here, and they went naturey, magicy, like unnatural naturey stuff to regrow my limbs, and I got very lucky. I'm pretty sure that was just a DM or a plot marshal taking pity on me, because it sucks. Because what happens is, if you there are times where somebody will cut off all four of your limbs, you're potatoed, you're just a torso and a head, and you don't have any crafters in town, you don't have anybody that has an oil, and you cannot be affected by magic, and there's not a convenient NPC sitting around to heal you. That's very regular. So what do? Well, the answer is you walk out of game. You say, okay, I'm going to go NPC the rest of my game. That sucks. Okay? So when I say that I hear sever limb or crush limb and I walk the other direction, I mean it, bro. I do not mess around with those effects. I run the other way. Like, I don't run away from magic mages. I do not run away from people casting spells, but I definitely, which a lot of people do, but I run away from sever limbs. Is what that stuff is, what Nullifidians are about. Okay, anyway, sorry, that's a whole tangent because I saw that on Threshold, sever limb on Threshold, which is, it's super relevant though. It's super, if you're gonna play Nullifidian, you need to know that. Um, Lesser inoffensive to mist beetles. All right, so you're thinking like, oh, there's the mist, right? So in the mist, there are these mist beetle things that eat magic, and they really don't like mages. So which makes sense because you live in the mist and you don't like mages. Well, so don't mist beetles. Mist beetles do not like mages, and they're neat. And sometimes they come out of the mist, and when they do, so it does not function within the mist, right? So that has to do with mist walking, right? Which also isn't on the base racial. You're like, huh? They're from the mist, but they don't mist walk at a base racial? I have no way to tell you why. But because typically it's an elder skill is the answer, actually. It's like there's no other race that can base racially mist walk, so it's an elder. It may make sense. We'll get into that. Um, it's cool. Ghouls have lesser inoffensive to mindless undead, or they have like lesser invisibility. They have invisibility to mindless undead, and this kind of functions the same way. The mist beetles see you, and then you say lesser inoffensive to mist beetles, and they go, "Oh, cool. We're not gonna attack you. We're gonna attack all your buddies though." And you're like, "Okay, that's fine." So it saves your bacon, but it doesn't save friends. And also, as soon as you hit one, they're like, "Hey, this guy's hitting me. I'm gonna hit him back," because you're only lesser inoffensive. They don't. If you offend them, they just have a friendly inclination towards you. They don't really. They're still gonna attack you if you piss them off. Okay, and they're fun. They're cool. Mist beetles are neat. I like mist beetles because I'm a because I'm a Nullifidian. I like mist beetles. It makes sense. Uh, Immunity. So let's get into the elders. So there is one specific way that you play. There's two specific ways that you play a base Nullifidian and you don't go elder, and that is you go into Knavery, and you go into the upper of Knavery, which is called Rogue, and you just say the word dodge a lot. And when you go that way, sever limbs aren't as scary because your defense to a lot of stuff is dodge anyway. And dodge is what gets past a sever limb, so you're dodging stuff anyway. So you go really deep into rogue, into knavery, or you go 50-50 on knavery and weapon mastery, and you go become an augment reaver. Which again, we'll talk about uppers, but reaver is the augment that is specifically about both the fighting pools. So we talked about Paladin with Kesserin and how Paladin is spirit and weapon mastery. Reaver is knavery and weapon mastery, right? And there's like however many combinations that four pools could make of two. So it might be six, it might be eight, it might be 10. I don't know the exact math on that. But you're either you're dumping a ton of rogue into reaver, you're dumping a ton of build into being a rogue, or you're dumping a ton of build into both weapon mastery and knavery, and you're becoming a reaver. Or no, that's about it. Oh, or you're going like really hard into weapon mastery, but I wouldn't recommend that personally. I've met I've met two other Nullifidians, and the other Nullifidian, one is doing the exact same thing I'm doing, which is a specific. We'll get into that. Because if you watched episode 102, we talked about Zen, and I'm a Zen player and a Nullifidian player, and I also talked about how really bad Zen is. It turns out when you take the worst path and the worst race, they're actually really good when they're combined together. Um, but yeah, those are what you would be doing if you're not becoming a base Nullifidian, or if you're not becoming an Elder. And there's a lot of really good reasons to become Elder. Okay, so diving into Elder Nullifidian, which is what I do. Construct magic, immunity to construct magic. This allows you to walk past and through wards, circles, wizard locks, walls of force, and other magical barriers. This is a sweet skill, man. Like, you threw up a circle, and circles are pretty common. You're going to see them, but they're basically a white rope that they throw down, and they have like a little bubble that you cannot interact with almost. I think psionics, you can throw psionics through them. But everything else, it's like basically effectively a big wall that nobody can get into this circle, and it's like a little safe place. And you'll see a lot of them in tavern, where it's like, hey, I'm doing this circle thing, because to cast rituals, it involves to cast utility rituals that do stuff on items. You have to be in a circle. So that's why people cast circles or whatever, and you just get to walk into them like whenever you get to walk through them. It's pretty fun. It's pretty cool. I haven't really ran into wizard locks yet, but walls of force I've ran into one time. Wards are more common, where it's like, hey, I have a cabin and I'm gonna put a ward on it, so only my buddies can enter this cabin. You get to walk through that anyway, and you get to enter the cabin. Um, Obviously, don't use this to like enter somebody's cabin that they really want to keep private. Like, that would be mean. But if you're doing it for like in-game reasons, like, oh, I know they have something in that cabin, like, then maybe. I have no idea. I've never personally used this to. Theoretically, in a roleplay game, there are situations where you would invade people's private spaces. I'm not going to recommend that at all. Do not do that, okay? That might be cool in D&D, but in real life, people really like their own private space. Do not interrupt people's private spaces. I personally, unless I get specific permission, like, the ward doesn't stop me, but somebody warding their cabin means please don't come in here, effectively. And so I will respect their wishes, and you should too. Like, it's not cool to interrupt people's spaces. Anyway, uh, that's pretty neat, right? Like, you get to walk through some wizardry walls and crap. That's pretty cool. Immunity to ritual magic. This is when stuff gets good, boys. This is why you play an Elder Nullifidian, okay? This other F all this other crap. Immune to rituals, okay? The scariest crap in this game is rituals. Okay? The scariest thing is a big bad evil guy throwing magic spells and rituals, okay? And when you're an Elder Nullifidian, you're immune to both. That is the trade-off. Your regular game sucks, but at the end of Saturday night, when the big bad evil guy comes out, everybody wants to stand behind you because that guy is throwing ritual obliterates and ritual strike breaths and all this other crap that's super terrifying to people, and you're immune to all of it. It's awesome. Uh, that being said, I actually haven't had really like a big fight where this has been relevant because I personally I like to NPC a lot. So I enter game and then I go on like two mods and I'll dump all of my pool and my resources into those mods. I'll get paid and then I'll be like, "Oh, I don't have any more resources to like play the game anymore, so I guess I'll go NPC." Which, a lot of people that's perfectly fine. A lot of people do that. Uh and so a lot of those a lot of those big bad evil fights, I'm actually like participating on the opposite side. Like, I'll be an NPC that's like fighting the players. So a lot of the times I actually don't get to use this skill very often, but It's really cool because some of the scariest things that people throw in fights are ritual magic, and you're immune to that, which is sweet. That's like half the reason why you're playing an Elder Nullifidian. Mistwalk. We're gonna save this for last, okay? We're gonna save this for last. But just know you can enter the mist. Resist runic. So I complained a bit at cannot use magic with runes, and immunity to magic spells doesn't work on runes. You don't get uh immune to runes. You get resist runes, which are super good. I'm pretty sure no one else has this. I'm pretty sure no other race has this, and we've covered most of them so far. Resist runic is super sweet, and there's not a whole lot of them. So when somebody does dump a 500 damage lava rune into you, you just say resist and you laugh. You're not immune to it, so you don't get to say no effect, but I mean, still having resists to it is amazing. And there's these things called glyphs, which are trap runes and are much more common than actual traps. Uh, and when you like walk through a doorway, the trap triggers and you take like here's 50,000 lava damage or some bullcrap. And which is if you want people to like Nullifidians are good scouts for that reason because we're immune to like magic spells and we can resist runes. So a lot of the like, hey, is that door trapped? Oh, send the Nullifidian in. He can get past wards, circles, wizard locks, runes, bad magic spell traps. Right, like the Nullifidians are really good scouts, actually, theoretically. But yeah, we get resists runics. We're not immune to them. That's okay. Immunity to construct weapons. This is a bit niche, but there are spells that make weapons. So, Staff, and here's some examples. Staff of Sorcery Spirit, which is a spell. Staff of the Magi, which is a worm thing. Force Weapon, which is a sorcery thing. Paladin Weapon. Avatar Spirit Weapon. There's like I think it's at the level 3, it's at the rank 3 spell, which is like you can just summon a weapon, and the summoned weapon is specifically it is colored white with a orange headband around the handle, or an orange strap around the handle to show that it's a spirit weapon, which means that it's like a magical, like it's a weapon made of magic, and so you get to be so not still, you're not immune to magic type. So if somebody swings 25 magic at you, you're not immune to that. But if somebody throws anything from one of those spiritual type of summoned weapons, you are immune to that because you're immune to the weapon, not because you're immune to the whatever they happen to be throwing, right? And that's an important distinction to make. Miss Native, we have 2 strength rate. Miss Native 5 build. Uh, while within the mist, the character has 8 plus 6 strength, so you have 2 naturally, so you go to 8 strength and you double their maximum body total. So this does not increase the current body, however. So your body total. So if you have 100 health, it doubles to 200. But it does not increase your total current body. So if you have 100 health and then you get doubled to 200, okay, you still have 100 health at the moment, but your cap is raised to 200. So you have to you have to heal yourself out with alchemy or something to 200, which is possible. There's ways to do it. And when you're in the mist, there's like ways to do it easier, um, which is neat. Uh, while within the mist, yeah. So when you're in the mist, you're better at being in the mist. Yeah, it makes sense. You're a native of the mist. So the way that one of the plot marshals describes it is you are you live in the mist for the most part, and then when you're on Aldratha, you're taking a vacation. Like you live in the mist, and then being in Aldratha is like an extra thing for you, roleplay wise, right? That's what Mist Native kind of means, kind of, and that's just how he interprets it. There's all of these skills for the most part are up to interpretation, but this basically says you're native to the mist. You're in your element when you're in the mist, and that's represented by being very strong and doubling your body. And doubling your body when you're an Nullifidian is super important because you like having lots of health and you like having lots of armor. Uh, resist primal magic. Elder. These are cool, and they don't really come up a whole lot. A character with this ability may resist one ritual surge or backfire effect targeting the character. This may not be used to defend against an effect that character suffers from touching a pool or otherwise initiating the surge/backfire on themselves. Okay, so when you're ritual casting, there's a chance that things go horribly wrong and stuff blows up. So ritual casting is dangerous, which is why they put a circle up. So mages will kind of want a Nullifidian to sit in the circle because there's times where a ritual will be like you're in the middle of crafting a ritual and something surges or backfires and a random effect is thrown out and that random effect is like a D100 list or something and and it's typically bad stuff, like dangerously bad stuff, like your character just dies or uh you become a different race or stuff, and that's very frustrating for a lot of the mages. So when a Nullifidian is in the circle and a backfire happens, you can use the 3 times a game, you can say resist to that thing happening, which is useful to the mages because they much rather have it hit you than hit them. And you get defenses against it, and they don't. There's not ways really to defend against these things. So you being able to defend against these things are cool. Now, when you go out of your way to do stuff like that, uh, when you go out of your way to do stuff like that, it doesn't work. You can't initiate this stuff on yourself because there's ways to cause surges and backfires, and there's also ways to there's things called Pool of Magic, which I extremely advise you to go out and touch, and they're just like pools of random magic. And when you touch them, they do random magic stuff, which a lot of the times is really neat. Um, so go out and go touch pools of magic. I promise you, it won't be a bad experience. I promise. Uh, and now we'll talk about mist walking. Okay, so mist walking, and keep in mind that elder folk. Let's see, elder folk. Do elves get it too? No. Okay, elder folk, the nomad humans, and so far Nullifidians get mist walking, okay? And we're the only race that gets mist native. But all those races get mist walking, okay? And this allows you to enter and exit the mists as long as the mists are available, quote unquote. And what that means is the plot is willing to run a mist walking adventure because walking in the mist is almost a guaranteed adventure. There's not a, oh yeah, you're going to safely go from point A to point B. There will always be some sort of skill or challenge or thing that plot will have to interact with. There's not like a, oh, hey, I'm going to mist walk from point A to point B. Well, they can't just let you do that. There is always something in between there. So, going on a mist walk is what people call it. Going on a mist walk is directly pulling attention from monster camp and from the plot marshals. And so the mists sometimes will be like, hey, I'm unavailable. And what that really means is like, I don't have anything planned. I have 3 NPCs and I much rather have 3 NPCs entertaining the rest of the people as opposed to you and 2 other people that are going on this mist walk with you, right? So when you're thinking of mist walking, you need to understand that you're pulling resources away from monster camp, and a lot of the times they can't just dedicate. You can't just be like, oh, I want to go into the mist. That's not really how it works. So when the mists are available, when you feel like the mists can allow you to mist walk, and there's a lot of roleplay in this too. There's a lot of cool roleplay that comes with, like, somebody will walk up to you and they're like, hey, I need to go to this place. Can you help me mist walk there? And you'll be like, ooh, no, the mists aren't really feeling it right now. This isn't the right time, right? Like it's neat. Um, so if what happens is if you want to take other people on a mist walk, you get to they all touch your shoulder, or they all link up in a human chain, uh, like a cha-cha slide type deal, and then you all mistwalk into the mist with a call or something like we mistwalk 1, we mistwalk 2, we mistwalk 3. And they have to be willing, which means they can't be unconscious. I think. I don't know if that is the case because I think I've mistwalked people who are unconscious into the mist before to like try and save them because like the mist was less scary than the thing that we were facing. And like so we're dragging bodies with us into the mist to try and get away. And you must notify a marshal prior to the skill. There's not like a, oh, I'm gonna mistwalk from the tavern to my cabin. Like that's not a thing. You have to. This is a directly you're interacting with plot marshals type of skill. And this is cool. I spent a lot of my first games really trying to figure out what mistwalking was and like how mistwalking worked. And there's a lot to it. Like this 2 sentence, 3 sentence explanation of it does not encompass like if you had a really in-depth explanation of mistwalking, it would be like as big as this page because there's a ton of stuff to it. A lot of that stuff is go figure out in game. I haven't told you anything about mistwalking that isn't something that you should know right out the gate when you have the skill or how that works. There are other cultural and things in the mist that I will not tell you about because you need to go figure that stuff out for yourself. And not because I'm mean, but because it would not be fair for me to tell you because it's not in the rulebook for a reason. Yeah, that was Nullifidan. I think we hit 40. We're at 41 minutes, so this was a long conversation. And I didn't even talk about Zen. Oh, okay. Okay. So in episode 102, we talked about psionics and we talked about the path of will, and I told you Zen is very bad. And the answer is still Zen is very bad. But when you're a Nullifidian, Zen is okay. So the other Nullifidian I meet, so I play a Nullifidian, and there's one other character that also is a Nullifidian, and we are both Nullifidian Zen players. And if you really want to play a Nullifidian, I will tell you look into Zen. Um, but the I'll tell you right now, if you want to play an Elder Nullifidian, the absolute best thing you can probably do is that isn't going to be very painful and sucky when you're playing a Nullifidian is to go play a Knavery user. Go into upper Knavery, which is called Rogue, and we talked about the ability on goblins and how goblin has dodge as an elder, and as per the rogue skill, so go play a Nullifidian elder rogue and dodge all the time because you're immune to magic and you're immune to rituals, and so it's like what else hits you like skill. So if you just dodge everything else, you're really efficient. Okay, so if you really, really wanted to play a Nullifidian, play a Knavery, dump all your pool into Knavery, go like race A and pick up all as much of the Nullifidian racials as you can, go skill B and dump a ton of pool into Knavery and like some of the base Knavery skills, and then walk in with sword and as much armor as you can get. That's it. Like that is like I think optimally that's the best thing to do, and that's not even talking about role play. Role playing as an Nullifidian is okay. We're very honorable people, and like if somebody slaps you in the face, like you're typically going to slap them back. You're very honor is paramount to the culture. So you're very if somebody messes with your honor, you're very Zuko-y. If somebody messes with my honor, I must earn my honor back. So we hold grudges. But yeah, we're getting this video's getting pretty long. We're almost at 45 minutes. So I'm going to cut it there. Thank you for if you watched this video, thank you for listening to my rant. I understand and I have the perspective that I'm a weird guy on YouTube who's probably only going to get 10 views on this video. So, if you're into Shiftedlands so much that you sat through all that, appreciate it, man, or thing or person or woman, whatever you identify as. Uh, thanks. Yeah, I played Nullifidian. I had a lot to say about Nullifidians. On to Ogre.